And we are very excited to be joined today by Andy McCullough from The Athletic to talk about the MLB playoffs and Diamondbacks baseball. Andy, thank you so much for being here, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes, so the Arizona Diamondbacks, I know that we have our feelings about them, but what is your thoughts on what this team has accomplished this year and kind of the way they've emerged from where they were 2 seasons ago to kind of now being here part of the playoff race and being a competitive young team that's fairly fun to watch?
Yeah, I feel like the Diamondbacks sort of in this era, like under Mike Hazen and Torey Lovello, like their brand has always been like competence, right? Like
Yeah.
they catch the baseball, they play clean baseball, like they tend to play hard, they take extra bases, all that sort of stuff, and that benefits from the fact that there's a significant amount of incompetent, teams across the sport. And this is kind of and the group that they've assembled now, though, with like Corbin Carroll and Gabriel Moreno and Zach Gallen, like they have like star power to match that in a way that and young star power in a way that they kind of didn't in that earlier incarnation. I'm thinking closer to like like 2017, 2018, those clubs. So yeah, I mean, they've had a successful year, that they will most likely make the postseason, which is a good achievement. Obviously, like I imagine it's been frustrating for you guys, like watching them, especially in July when the club just kind of like fell apart. But
Yes.
it's a credit to them that they've kind of rectified things. They righted the ship after because August wasn't much better, but they're in a decent spot. Like I think they are a team that is not brutal to watch. I think, which is nice, right? Like because they have like exciting players, they don't play like sloppy games, like so
Yeah.
it's a good aesthetic experience in addition to being like a decent club. So it's it's a plus for me. I don't mind it.
Yeah, there was a lot of frustration with fans when you talk about that aspect of being fun to watch. With like they were very fun to watch, but they blew a lot of games with the bullpen not being able to hold leads late and things like that. It really does feel though like lately, due to some roster changes and some other kind of key pickups to change their bullpen that they made, that things are much better. Like it doesn't have that feeling of dread over the last couple of weeks when they get late in a game and have maybe a small lead that the bullpen isn't necessarily it going to blow it. Like it felt at like a time where you could almost guarantee that if a game was close, things were on the line, you didn't feel very good about this bullpen holding the game. But things have changed, and that particular one thing it feels like it's made it more fun for Diamondbacks fans to watch this team late. But this is a tough National League. And I know for the most part, we've talked a lot about how good the Braves and the Dodgers are versus kind of the rest of the field. So I guess, do you think that it's a fair assessment that the Dodgers and the Braves are kind of a distant gap between them and the rest of the National League teams?
Yeah, I mean, and I think this year there's a pretty significant gap between the Braves and the Dodgers.
Yeah.
I mean, the Braves to me are just such a relentless offensive machine. I think it's going to be really challenging if their lineup is clicking. It's going to be really challenging for anyone to beat them this postseason. But whatever, you can say that about teams every year, right? The Dodgers last year were like a 120 true talent win team, and went out in their first round. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that Atlanta and Los Angeles have sort of they've got kind of a perpetual motion machine in some ways. I mean, with Atlanta, it's pretty simple in that they've like locked up their core for the next like 6 years. Like all of their players are, fairly young and, on kind of team friendly extensions. So they're just kind of like a juggernaut. All those guys play every day too. So you can just like pencil in that lineup for the next like 2 or 3 years. And with the Dodgers, they are addicted to winning. Like they are just like incapable of not winning, kind of like they fall out of bed. Yeah, they fall out of bed and win. Like, and a lot of that, right, is a credit to, the institutional culture that's been, led by Andrew Friedman and Dave Roberts, and the fact that like every day Dave Roberts gets to start his lineup with Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts, like, and just those two guys are, such like that gives you just such a head start on the rest of the sport when you're able to have those two players at the top of your lineup. And so, yeah, I mean, I feel like the rest of the league, there was a thought, especially in Los Angeles, they felt that the Padres were going to be a real significant contender this year. Obviously, San Diego is, flamed out as they tend to do. And, and I think there's at least with the Dodgers, right, there's a healthy respect for the D-backs because, again, as I said, they play good baseball, they play hard, they're, not an easy out. But I think it just in talent, there's a decent gap there for sure. Yeah.
Andy, would you say, from the Diamondbacks perspective, there's been this perception for years that even if the Diamondbacks do come around and they develop some good young players as they have this year, and we've started to see some of that success pan out this year, there's still this sense that, as you said, the Dodgers just roll out of bed and they just win. And, they just clinched another NL West title. They win the NL West basically every single season. It's just sort of a given. It's just kind of an assumption going into every year at this point. Are the Diamondbacks kind of in a position where, sure, they can make the playoffs, they can make some noise, but they're basically going to have to do it via the wild card every year for seemingly forever because the Dodgers are just doing what the Dodgers do?
Sorry, I have to move my cat. He's being very challenging.
That's all right. The cat can join us for sure.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's more that he's actively trying to close my laptop. He's
like, is this a Diamondbacks podcast? Let's get rid of this.
Yeah. No. This is his shift at the Being Bad factory. So he's here. Anyway, yeah. So I guess the point you're making, are the Diamondbacks perpetually assigned to the wild card? Not exactly. However, it's a significant, mountain facing them every single year. Just to have a team as well financed, as well run as the Dodgers, a team that tends to one, they've hit on some of their major long-term free agent guys. Two, they've been able to overcome the mistakes they've made in free agency. Guys like signing Trevor Bauer has affected their reputation with around the league, but didn't affect their day-to-day performance per se, right? It was embarrassing, but they still won a ton of games. With Arizona, the idea has always been they need to kind of assemble a wave of prospects, right? Who can come in. And so it's all of a sudden you can actually see, okay, this is what, a real starting nine who looks like, right? And there's some guys who are, already there, right? Carroll's part of that. Moreno's part of that. Imagine Jordan Lawler's supposed to be part of it. Drew Jones would theoretically be part of it, right? And so if you can get theoretical all-star players, all together at once, then you have a chance to actually compete. But it just makes it harder to do it for longer than a 2, 3, maybe 4-year window, probably closer to 2 or 3. It just means you kind of have to really protect your bullets and not, try it. You have to understand the years where you don't have a real chance to compete and versus the years where, if all those guys are up and they're sort of 24 to 27, that's the time. That's the time to try and overtake them. But it's just hard to sync it up. I mean, it's a real challenge.
It seems like for the Diamondbacks this year, I mean, as we were talking about before we hopped on here, if you let 36 hours pass, the wild card standings change dramatically, and who you're playing in the first round, who you're playing in the second round changes. Very rapidly in this competitive environment that we have right now. If you're the D-backs right now, Andy, this is sort of the $1 million question that we've been trying to answer. Do you want the Brewers in the first round or the Phillies, if those are your two options?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, the Phillies sometimes might just stop hitting for 2 days. The problem is, but also the Brewers never really hit, but the Brewers always pitch. I don't know. I mean, I guess you just rather play the Brewers. I think the Phillies are probably a slightly better team, and they have star power. Hold on, I'm sorry. I'll be right. I need to actually physically move this cat.
Oh no, that's fine. That's fine. Sometimes pets get in the way of our podcast, and we are fine with that. We are absolutely fine with that. But we are definitely thrilled to have Andy here, and make sure to check out his book that he's releasing next spring. It's The Last of His Kind. Clayton Kershaw and the Burden of Greatness.
There's a big market for that book here
here in Arizona.
Sure.
I know you guys are huge
I'm a
Clayton
big
Kershaw
baseball
fans.
book guy in general.
Yeah.
I've been reading a lot of baseball books.
I have been too. Yeah, baseball books. I find them fascinating, especially because at times we really do know very little about like famous incidents that happen, things that happen, championship seasons that happen, and like it's always great to get that insight. But Andy's back, and of course his cat.
Guys.
No, that's fine. His cat's being bad, but that's fine. We're fine with that. We are big fans of cats around here. Baxter, we know him. But yeah, so we were also talking about, like, of course, the playoff format. And we've kind of had some disagreements here in house about the 12-team playoff format, how the 162 game season at times can come down to, allowing these extra teams in, and it even seems like a disadvantage maybe a little bit for the teams that have won the most games in baseball. So what are your thoughts on the way it is? Because I will say we do also find it very exciting, considering this allowed the Diamondbacks to be a part of this wild card race for so long.
Yeah, I mean, I was not a fan of expanding the playoffs. I think they were already sort of over expanded. I think just because it incentivizes teams to race towards the middle rather than race towards the top. Because you have teams who will just sort of shoot for winning 88 games every year, knowing that that'll probably get you in the postseason mix, and that tends to suppress the market for players, but more importantly for the fans, it makes it so that teams are less willing to be aggressive at the trade deadline because, what you're actually acquiring has less value, especially in terms of rentals. There's the constant do we really want to, get a rental to go for a wild card spot or whatever? Right. And so, but it's fine. It's fine. Like, I've had a chance to watch, just for work, I've had to watch a lot of teams that are kind of in the 86 to 90 win range, which is okay. It's sort of, above average baseball is all right. Most of those teams have 2 or 3 good players. So that's good. I mean, I think it's fine. I have absolutely zero sympathy for the top seeds if they lose after a break. If teams use that as an excuse, absolute loser shit. Win the games in front of you. The Houston Astros had time off last year, ran the table, no problem. The best team wins. That part of it, doesn't matter what the format is. The team that plays the best will win, basically. But yeah, I wasn't crazy about expanding the postseason.
I'm conflicted myself, just because I do like the more exciting fact of more teams making it in, and what that can mean for just fans watching baseball and being able to root on their team. I also like the idea of, obviously the balanced schedule, playing more teams, getting to see more teams that we don't normally see. But even that now kind of seems like it's drifted away, because we played so many teams within our division for the purpose of deciding a true winner of that division. And now that's even less, it feels like I don't know. It's the 162 game season at times feels like it conflicts with all of these changes that they're trying to make as far as the expanded, schedule and expanding the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, I think for fans, the obvious fix would be to go to 154 game season. But fans don't really have a say in it, right? It's between the players and the owners, and the players do not want to give up the salary they would be, they would be sacrificing with that, and the owners aren't going to pay you 162 game wage for 154 game season, and so it would redo the salary structure in a way that's just kind of intractable, I think. So yeah, it is what it is. Still a good product, Pitch clock's great.
What are your thoughts on the obviously with the new playoff format, the lack of a game 163 and the tiebreaker? Something that Jesse brought up on the show the other day, a series against the Marlins way back in April or whatever it was, could ultimately decide whether or not the Diamondbacks make the playoffs. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think from terms of the cleanliness of the narrative, right? Game 163 is better. like I remember covering the 2018 Dodgers when I was at the LA Times, and that year with the Dodgers, the Rockies and the D-backs were all very, very close at the end, and there was kind of a three-way race down to the last day, and then the Dodgers ended up playing the Rockies in game 163 and, winning the division, and that was like a super exciting, week or so. So losing that, I think is a bummer, but the counter is that you get another round of the postseason that sort of functions in that way. It just doesn't have like game 163 sounds cool. Like, we're playing game 163, right? Whereas like we're in the American League wild card round. Like, no, that sucks. Like game 163, that's the it's really, it's six, like they're just different versions of the same thing, which is elimination baseball in October, which is fun.
Yeah.
Andy, later on in the show, we're going to talk about Torey Lovello and his opportunity to potentially, win the Manager of the Year award. That's sort of a trend here in Arizona. Every time the Diamondbacks make the playoffs, their manager inevitably wins Manager of the Year. It's happened the last 3 times this team has made the postseason, dating back almost 20 years.
It's a prerequisite, actually.
It somehow seems to be just ingrained into the universe. But what I want to ask you is just about the Manager of the Year award in general, and how, fortunately, I'm not voting for Manager of the Year this year. But I feel like I never would really want to, because it's just it's an impossible thing to really judge for us as outsiders. I mean, I think we as writers and reporters, we maybe see 5% of what a manager actually does on a day-to-day basis, and so we wind up just basing it off of these narratives of like expectations coming into the season versus what teams actually accomplish. To me, it just seems like an impossible award, and I don't know if we're allowed to get rid of it. I don't know if I see that happening, but it just seems kind of silly the way that it's set up.
Yeah, you explained it pretty well, I think. I don't vote for the BBWAA awards. I don't vote for the Hall of Fame. They don't pay me for it, and so it's not worth the time to invest in it. If they offer me money, I'd consider it.
Respect,
dude. Like, you imagine, like, you know how hard it is to try and decide like who's going to win a Cy Young every year?
That's crazy to me.
The Cy Young's impossible now. Anyway, I think, Jesse, the points you made with Manager of the Year, I totally agree. Like, I think it's a nice idea as an award, because I think it is nice to recognize, that you should, I think it's a nice idea to recognize a manager for like doing a job that's above and beyond. But it's really impossible to know. There's so much limited information, and even if you really know a team intimately well, you're probably only getting. You're not getting enough. You're not getting 100%, certainly, of everything that goes on within the clubhouse, within day-to-day decision making, and then extrapolate that for a 14 other team voting pool. Like, it's kind of impossible to decide. But it, like, I don't know. The BBWAA will never push towards giving up one of our awards, and so I don't foresee that in the future. And so you just kind of look at it as like, look, you reward some manager who everyone's team picked to finish 4th, who ended up finishing 2nd, and it's like, all right, well, nice for that guy. Hope he had a bonus or something attached to
it. So we talked a little bit about the gap in the National League there between the Braves and the Dodgers, right? But are there any wild card teams that you find to be dangerous? Is there any teams that you think that could make you a splash? I mean, I know we're very realistic about it here and about the difference in the competition level, right? But at the same time, it is the playoffs, and of course, anybody can get hot at the right time and do what we saw kind of the Phillies do last postseason.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Arizona, like in a 5-game series, they're dangerous. I think in a 7-game, the bullpen, this rotation just kind of gets exposed. It's just kind of tough. But
yeah, we agree with that.
They have some really good players too. Like, it's just like, in order to do it, it would be like you'd have to be using Zach Gallen on short rest, like the Dodgers used to with like Clayton Kershaw, and it's like that doesn't happen anymore. Teams don't do that.
Yeah.
But in terms of wild card teams, like the Phillies, man. I mean, they are certifiably nuts. They have star power. They don't give a shit about pressure. Like, they did it last year. Like, they're the one National League wild card, I feel like, who could stand and trade with Atlanta, with the Dodgers. I just feel like, the Giants, the Giants might be out of it actually, because they just got, the D-backs kind of put them to sleep this weekend or this week. The Cubs, no. The Marlins, no. So I think it's really just the Phillies. But the thing with the D-backs is in a 5-game series, I feel like they would be prepared. They would be, they game plan really well. Shout out to Dan Herron. They do a good job within their means. It's just, I think in a 7-game series, it becomes hard to just see that pitching staff making it through an elite lineup, in 5 or 6 or 7 games.
We don't even know what they would do for the 3-game series in the wild card round. And then if they made it past that into the first round, right? So we know obviously they want Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly out there as much as possible. Yeah. But they really don't even have a full starting 5-man rotation. And I just don't know, we don't know what they would do just to try to maximize that and to get those guys as many games in the playoffs should they win and go past that first wild card round.
Yeah, this poor young man, I've been purposely mispronouncing his last name all year, but Brandon Pfaadt.
You got it.
That's it.
No, I know. We on our podcast we've jokingly called this poor fellow Brandon Fat for no reason, just because we're children.
I've heard it. Andy. We're aware.
Yeah, we would love him to come on the show just so he could yell at us. Anyway, yeah, you could use him theoretically, but that feels, like you need someone backed up behind him. Yeah, it's a challenge. They have, like I said, they have two good starting pitchers, and if you were willing to use those guys on short rest and just, burn them to a crisp, you'd have a chance. But that just doesn't feel like a good decision long term.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, we really appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us today. This was fantastic, and we appreciated the cat making an appearance as well. We especially enjoyed that.
If there's anyone, I know that in general in the Phoenix area there are a lot of feral cats. If anyone would like an extra cat in Phoenix, please send me a message on Twitter, and I will mail you my cat. No,
perfect.
Harry's wonderful.
We'll help you out with that for sure. Hey, man, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks for having me. See you guys.